Hello, and we are joined tonight by Claudia Christian. How are you today?
Good, thank you. How are you?
That's you. So you were just telling me you're a little bit sore and we might only be able to go for an hour tonight.
It's not really sore. I got a COVID booster and the flu shot today about an hour and a half ago, and it just gave me this, for the first time actually, it gave me this really weird tight head and real fatigue. I don't know if it must be a different strain because the rest of them didn't really have this effect on me, but I'm sort of sort of exhausted, but we'll power through it, right?
Yes, we
Like
will.
powered through it 3 days after I had a hip replacement, so I'm sure I can do this after
Oh,
COVID. Yeah.
yes. So, just to get started out, there might be some people in here that are not familiar with you. Would you mind starting out by explaining a little bit of your AUD at an early age? Do you recall your first beverage? Do you remember the feeling? Can you explain how everything started?
Three older
Older
brothers.
brothers.
I just
I
I'm getting
just I'm
on myself. That's um and I think one of my brothers and I snuck in and had like a little sip of some banana flavored liqueur from South America or something like that. I don't remember feeling any exuberance, or just felt sort of naughty for doing it, but um I wasn't one of those people who had a huge reinforcement or anything. It didn't make me feel more comfortable in my own skin or anything. I already felt pretty comfortable. I was so that it really wasn't until my late 30s that I had a problem. I was a light drinker up until my into my 20s, and then in my 30s I was in some pretty traumatic relationships, ironically with alcoholics, and suffered some other incidents and started collecting wine. And I think the two of them just didn't go together. So that's when my problem developed. And I was 43 in 2009 when I found the Sinclair method. Prior to that, I had tried everything: AA, 17 different meetings, 2 different countries, rehab, hypnotherapy, psychotherapy, you name it, vitamin therapy. So that really was the turning point for me, was 2009. And by 2010, I was coaching informally with people because it just wasn't accessible to anyone in the world.
Mhm.
And it seemed like I was fighting this uphill battle of just trying to help people get medication. That at that point in Spain, I was living part of the time in England, and in Spain it was over the counter. I had to source mine in India, as I said in my talk. Um, just a very frustrating time. People were dying, and people were reaching out to me because I was just sort of, I don't know, I was finding people that were struggling. They were Then when my book came out about the Sinclair method in 2012, my I put a contact information in the back. I started getting more people. So um, that gave me the impetus to make my documentary and then open C3 Foundation in 2013. So we just turned 10 in July.
Great. And congrats on that.
Thank
Now,
you.
I guess because you had said that you had tried so many methods all the way up in 2009, was there anything that was giving you any sort of success? What, I guess at that point, what was success for you? Would it have been like harm reduction, or would it have been just being sober? And is that just
Um,
what wasn't happening?
this is such a different format. Usually, people in the room ask me questions, and you're asking me questions, so it's so weird. Usually, I'm here. It's like ask Claudia, not ask Claudia about Claudia. But I'm happy to answer anything. No, because I still had cravings, so nothing worked. I went to an AA meeting, and with white knuckling it and your own, self motivation, you can stay sober for a certain amount of time, but it's not realistic. The second you get out of rehab, I was into alcohol. Of course you can stay sober in a rehab facility because there's no alcohol. But it's funny enough, the when I went to, women were sneaking alcohol and drugs into in Northern California for $30,000. They were sneaking stuff in. So it was just absurd. The whole thing was ridiculous to me. No, but the point is that with cravings, emotional and physical cravings, you're prone to relapse, period. You get rid of the cravings, you get rid of the relapses. Well, it's one of the rules of getting rid of using a medication is a great step in the right direction for not relapsing.
Mm-hmm. And for anyone that might be new on here, can you explain a little bit about how you found out about the Sinclair method?
Sure. I was just desperate, and I had grabbed a flyer out of my, I had to go to a medical detox for my last bender in 2009, and it was medical detox ever. It was just a horrific experience. But on the way out, I grabbed a bunch of flyers for various things, postcards and things, and I took them home, and I was looking at them, and one of them was for the shot Vivitrol. And I had never heard of anything like that. It said, get rid of cravings. And I thought, oh, that's, I want that. And the funny thing is that I called that detox place about 12 times trying to set up an appointment to get the shot, and nobody ever returned my call. I look at that as God's intervention, because what I did for frustration was I Googled the shot, what the ingredient is, thinking I can just get the ingredient and take it orally. And then this book popped up, The Cure for Alcoholism, which I thought was a, yeah, right, snake oil. And that led me down that rabbit hole. And I read the 3 chapters online. I ordered the book, which then I immediately ordered naltrexone. It took ages to get there. By the time I started TSM, I was 3.5 months absent.
Okay.
It was a process of saying, and I was coming home, the pill bottle finally arrived, it was like a little box of, not even a pill bottle, it was like a flat sheet of these little pills from India. And I just said, if this doesn't work, I'm going to die. It was that simple in my mind. It was like, if this is literally my last and only, because at that point I had tried everything else. So that was my journey on TSM. I was on it for 9 years, and I've been abstinent almost 5.
Great. And because you're also a coach now, or you have been a coach, you said, after your first year, can you explain the most frequent things that you hear from patients that are, struggling, or, what are the main things that you get asked in general, I guess?
I'm answering somebody who's saying that they'd like to ask me questions. I'm hoping I can answer. Hold on, questions. That's the normal format people are used to. The biggest issues with people are compliance and not doing the emotional work that is tied into the whole Sinclair method journey, which is, they think that the pill is going to fix everything. And so most of the problems are that they are habitual drinkers, and they're not changing any habits or adding any new behaviors or activities, or perhaps they're finding it difficult to not take the tablet. But there's a myriad of problems that come up. Most of the problems with TSM are habits and compliance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. One question that's came in, is TSM the same for binge drinkers versus daily drinkers versus stress drinkers and anxiety drinkers?
That's a really good question. So TSM works in different ways for everybody, but I mean, mainly in the same way, in that it reduces cravings or eliminates cravings, and therefore gives you back an off button. But you have a myriad of different types of drinkers there. I was a binge drinker, and it worked for me because when I took the first drink, I didn't have that desire to keep going. And that never really came back. The desire to just drink until you pass out did not come back until I didn't comply in year 5. when I was doing it, it turned me from a binge drinker into a regular social drinker, even a light drinker, you would say. For regular daily drinkers, what it does is it will start decreasing the amount that they drink. And eventually, if they can add an alcohol-free day into there, then that puts them in the, gives them the ability to do the dual aspect therapy of TSM, which is increasing your good behaviors while you're decreasing the drinking. So without those alcohol-free days, the system is going to be quite as regulated as, you know, if you're drinking every day and taking naltrexone every day, it's not the optimal way to do TSM. It's good to have those washout days and those alcohol-free days so that you can go for a long hike, engage in good endorphin producing activities. So somebody who's an anxiety, social anxiety, or nervous person who's using alcohol as a self-medication, they're going to have to adopt different mindfulness techniques and use different tools in order to deal with social situations. And the underlying issue of what makes them so uncomfortable in social situations. And for that person, it would also be extremely helpful to have some support when they go to social occasions to ensure that they took their pill, that they're being mindful while they're drinking, that they're not, just drinking and telling the bartender more, so that they're really feeling themselves in their body. And they also have to have a really deep understanding that the more they drink and the more that alcohol wears off and the sugar kicks in, and the more their cortisol levels are going to rise, and that's really going to create even more anxiety. So you have to educate the person on the physiological aspect of introducing alcohol to an already anxious person. It's a temporary fix, and it's a fix that requires more and more alcohol as time goes by. As we all know, you start depending on it and you get used to it. So you know that one drink is not going to fix it. I have a lot of clients who have social anxiety that use alcohol for it, and quite often what I find is, with the right kind of questioning and digging in a safe environment, you can find out exactly what this stems from and what it is that makes them nervous. And there are ways to work around that, to work within. But I would say, to answer your question in a succinct way, that naltrexone itself, and doing it in a targeted way, meaning taking it 1 hour prior to the first drink of the day, every time you have a drink, absolutely will help any kind of drinker cravings and their consumption. I mean, that's been my experience over the past 13 years, that I really haven't found anybody who was a responder to naltrexone and did it correctly that didn't see some sort of decrease in cravings and consumption.
Okay, great. I am going to now unmute Dave. He had a question. Dave, I'm not sure that asked you to unmute.
I didn't have a question, Andy.
Oh.
But I see some in the chat. I know Dennis, Stephanie, and Jennifer do.
Looks like the first question I see on here. Just one moment.
Stephanie wants to know why I chose abstinence. So I'll tell you, Stephanie, without too much information making anybody here uncomfortable, but hormones, alcohol don't mix. And I was going through perimenopause, and my sleep was disrupted from that. And I just thought, you know what, alcohol isn't serving me at all in any way, shape, or form. Not even if I have 1 glass of wine a month. It doesn't make sense anymore for me, for my life, for my body. And I just realized also that even though TSM was a tremendous help, there's a reason why I was on it for 9 years. It's because I really didn't do all of that internal work. So once I started doing that internal work, I found I need alcohol less and less and less, because I was communicating with people. I was setting boundaries. I was becoming more evolved as a human being. I was spending more time thinking and doing my own practice of meditation and prayer. And I got to a place where I realized that even the smallest amount of alcohol really wasn't serving me at all. What was it bringing into my life? Extra calories, sugar. And then I read the Global Burden Study in 2020, which basically basically came to the conclusion that no amount of ethanol is okay for a human, or healthy or safe for a human being. And that made me feel really good about my choice, because my choice occurred in 2018, and that study came out during the pandemic around 2020, I believe. And it was the largest study done on human beings and alcohol. And I really thought, well, I think there's something to that. I think there's something to that even when AA talks about being allergic, there are some people who get flushed, some people who their body literally, people with asthma, they have wine and their chest feels tight. And I think that there's a lot to say about the fact that it is toxic, and that in anything more than very small quantities, I think it's quite dangerous to people. I know what it does to the body and brain now, so so it really sunk in for me, and that's why I went abstinent, and I've never had a craving for it. I've never had a desire for it. I have alcohol in the house, and I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky that through my recovery, I mean, even though it took a long bloody time, that I got to this place right now. And I'm happy I did when I did, because I think going through any hormonal changes are hard enough as they are, but to add alcohol into the mix, it's really bad. I get a lot of female clients who are struggling with hormonal imbalance, that are drinking too much to self-medicate. And that's something that women are prone to. All of you women out there should know that, whether you're premenstrual, perimenopausal, menopausal, postpartum, these things can really screw around with your hormones. I've spoken about this a million times, but people still don't know. That's why I say it in every meeting. So get your hormones checked, ladies. And even men who go through menopause, it's not, you're not alone. Men go through menopause, a lot of them. And especially men who have any prostate issues and aren't allowed to take testosterone supplements. You really have to watch that as well, because some people are prone to try to self-medicate with alcohol just because of their mood. Their moods are not regulated. Hormones are very tricky. If they're even slightly out of whack, it can adversely affect your mood, your physical being, everything. So it's important to keep up on that, both men and women, to really check your hormones and your thyroid level too.
Yeah, and hopefully that's something that most of our doctors take care of regularly. But getting to the doctor is also another thing that, a lot of people don't like doing. So it is important to get that stuff checked out. Looks like the next question comes from Dennis. I'll have you unmute.
Thank you, Andy. Claudia, I had a question about the emotional work that you mentioned in the beginning of the session. What emotional work are you referring to? And could you just give us some details on that?
Yes, you're welcome, Dennis. The thing that I most regret about my TED Talk is that I really focused on the biological aspect of compulsive disorder of the brain, AUD. And I didn't really understand at that point how much trauma and pain figure into people's drinking. It's not just habitual. It's not just a learned behavior. There's a lot of emotional component to it. So when I start speaking to someone who says, oh no, I have a perfect life, I've got a perfect marriage, it's just that I'm drinking too much. And then they're taking the tablet and they're doing TSM correctly, but they're still finding that they're drinking in certain situations. The emotional work is pinpointing why. And usually with every single client that I've worked with, maybe there's 2 or 3 exceptions, which are the unicorns, I have found some source of pain, whether it was being bullied as a child or something traumatic happened, or a parental figure represents something that triggers them, or another family member or a friend or an ex or a current love situation, whatever it is, or work, something is triggering them to seek comfort from alcohol. So the emotional work is many, many layered. It's first of all identifying why you're uncomfortable. So one has to ask himself, when on a Wednesday night, when that lizard says to you, hey, let's have a drink, you have to say, why? Why do I need a drink at 8 o'clock on a Wednesday night when I have to go to work tomorrow and it's going to disrupt my sleep and I'm going to have to take the tablet and wait an hour? Why do I need a drink right now. And if it's obviously, I'm sure you've all heard this, hunger, anger, tired, lonely, bored, the halt B, those aren't reasons to drink. So that's the first step of sort of identifying why are we compelled to want to drink right now? And I think examining ourselves and holding a mirror up to our behavior is really the first step. And it's a baby step toward understanding our relationship to alcohol and what alcohol brings to our life, what it is to us, i.e. numbing us to what makes us uncomfortable. And I think after you've identified it, then you can start taking steps in working on how to create a better environment for yourself. And usually that means improving your communication skills. So let's say, for an example, you have a mother who's extremely demanding and narcissistic and doesn't listen to you, doesn't see you, and puts you to visit her all the time, and you feel guilty and obligated, and every time you go, you just want to get hammered. You want to numb yourself. You sneak into her bar and do some shots, or you bring a little vodka up with you just to numb yourself. Well, you have to say that's not normal behavior. Okay, that's not a normal mother-daughter or mother-son relationship. So how do you possibly fix that? You got to communicate. When she says something that hurts you, you have to hold that voice. Honestly, you make me want to drink when you talk like that, or you hurt my feelings. And setting boundaries, saying, I'm not going to come up this weekend because I don't feel like it. I love you, but I've got other stuff to do. I want to see my friends, and I'll call you when I'm available. You have to set boundaries. And people who drink a lot tend to be really hard on themselves. So we become yes people. Yes, I'll do this. Yes, I'll throw the dinner. Yes, I'll do your dishes. Yes, I'll drive 4 hours to visit you. Yes, all these things I don't want to do. Watch your kids. I'll watch your pets. No, we have to start saying no and taking care of ourselves. So the emotional work, for a very long answer, I could go on for 2 hours about this, there's so many layers to it, but it all starts with why. You have to ask yourself, why? Why do I want to drink right now? What's happening around me that is making me feel uncomfortable or unloved or ashamed or humiliated or bored or angry or whatever? Once you identify what that reason is, then you can go from there. A lot of people will, well, I just drink because I like the feeling. Okay. Why? Well, it makes me, numb out. Well, what are you numbing out from? You can always ask why to anything. Well, I just, I have a good time. I have a better personality when I'm drinking. No, you don't. I've been around drunk people. They're not fun. I wasn't fun when I was drunk. I repeated myself. I was loud, so you have to ask yourself, truly, are you romanticizing your relationship to alcohol, or are you ready to examine your relationship to alcohol? So the steps begin with, am I ready to really examine it? And then when you're ready, you start asking why. And then you sit in those feelings and you determine what you can do to change that. Can I communicate a little bit better? Can I set some boundaries for myself? Can I ask for help? Can I ask for some support from somebody? Can I tell people what I need from them so that I can recover from this? And that's really scary for people to do. It's extremely scary and vulnerable, but it is necessary for recovery. Does that make sense, Dennis?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Okay, and our next question is from Jennifer. I will ask you to unmute.
Hi, thank you, Claudia. Really appreciate your time and insight. The question I had, let me go back to it. I was curious, the system, when do you think that they would start to recognize TSM as a recovery option? I had been to a few AA meetings, and I was really around the same time that I was looking at doing this, just to kind of look at the whole landscape. And I noticed that there were a lot of people in those meetings that were there just for this validation that they needed to get for the courts. So I was just curious, when this might change.
That's a really good question. If you ever saw my documentary, One Little Pill, it's available for free online now, and it's less than an hour long. There's a wonderful woman in there who has been in the judicial system for ages, Helen Harberts, and she talks about how it's criminal that they're not using naltrexone. She used it in her own court. But unfortunately, they have to tell people to take it with abstinence. So you will have some open-minded judges say, listen, have to go on the shot or court mandated, naltrexone or recommendation. I'm not sure if they're legally allowed to demand that somebody goes on it. But to be honest, harm reduction is coming into their psyche a little bit. I think that they're realizing that the all or nothing 12-step mentality of don't ever touch it again isn't working. The just don't do it, the Nancy Reagan's not work. So I do believe that because there are so many nonprofits devoted to harm reduction now, and there's so much support for harm reduction, I think that this is something that is a realistic option. And they have to see that if a person is making an effort is on a FDA approved medication for alcohol use disorder. I mean, I would imagine if somebody came back with their legal counsel and said, look, I'm with this telemedicine company, signed up for 6 months, they are on these medications, and it's reduced my drinking by 60%. I can't see how the judge could not, see that as improvement and as a step in the right direction and a motivated person. But unfortunately, things are slightly archaic in a lot of courtrooms still to this day. And the court mandated AA meetings are so unhealthy for the environment of AA meetings, because you have violent criminals being sent to the AA meeting where your sister goes or your mom goes. You have rapists going to AA meetings, court mandated. You have, sexual predators, that got a triple DUI or committed a crime under the influence, and they're court mandated to go to AA. So you throw that into the mix with some innocent bystanders, and to me, this is like throwing gasoline on an already toxic environment. It's not healthy for anybody. I mean, I wouldn't want, if I had, would I want my son in an AA meeting with a hardened criminal that was forced to be there? What kind of influences? I'm not saying that every criminal is a horrible person, but I'm just saying, someone's there to recover, and they're surrounded. They want to be with like-minded people. And here, there's a group of people who don't want to be there, actively do not want to be there, but they have to be there. And it's, to me, it's just, it's not healthy. Yeah, they just get their thing signed and that's what they have to do. To me, it would make far more sense to put them on this medication for cravings so they don't relapse. And an even better idea, if you guys want to hear my idea, is to do it while they're in prison, is to allow them to reach extinction in prison. And you don't have to use alcohol for that. There's been studies that use virtual reality. So it's a fake bar, and you give them non-alcoholic beer or something that makes them think about alcohol. And then you could create extinction by doing that. And by the time they get out of jail, they're clean and happily. So there are lots of different things I could add to your very, very good question, but I don't have the answers at all. I mean, it's we have a hard enough and large enough problem addressing just society in general, and the whole thought process in the United States, just the United States, don't even include the UK and Eastern Europe and all these other heavily drinking countries, of saying that everything has to do with alcohol, and the alcohol, they're so strong. So this is so pervasive in this country, where every single thing has to involve alcohol. Baby showers, everything, you got to get drunk for a football game, for this, for that. So it's really hard for people who are trying to reduce their consumption to be surrounded by this. And I would imagine for somebody who's trying to go on the straight and narrow and has a criminal record, to be sitting around in an AA meeting isn't terribly helpful. They should be getting work experience and maybe take naltrexone every day for cravings, you know?
And I notice even the rehab, going to rehab, it's almost the same thing. So, I mean, if you're not getting hit with it in rehab, you're getting it in AA, and yeah, it's just not great for everyone. I believe the next question we have is from Pad. I will go ahead and unmute you, Pad.
Hello. Yeah, thank
Hi.
you so much for coming to this meeting. Yeah, so I was basically wondering, like, after all the people that you've talked to during your career, what the most insightful thing you've been told was, you know, like if you just had one conversation that you had with somebody, like what was that conversation that stuck out the most to you?
Overall, it just to do with life in general, if that's what you're asking. I mean, I have a lot of
And about the TSM specifically.
devoted to TSM specific. Well, I would say that, you know, and it shows up in my documentary as well, but Dr. Sinclair said it to me, and it helped me enormously, was when I first was talking to him and met him, and this is before he was in my documentary, we were just talking about addiction and the shame and the humiliation that I felt, and you know, here I was, this person who thought I was strong, and I thought I'd been taking care of myself since I was 15, moved out, I had money, I was successful in a very difficult career, and I felt so much, I felt like, why is this me? Why? You know, and I was being told I was a horrible person in AA meetings, and they would take away my chips when I would relapse. And it was just like, everything was punitive and awful. And I felt so small and unseen. And he said to me the rat line, which is, he said, you know, Claudia, I never met a bad rat. and he said, he worked with alcoholics for 30 years. I never met a bad rat. They just learned alcoholism. He said, and it just, he said it so simply, and it just took away all of the shame, and it made me look so ridiculous to myself. It was like, oh yeah, I didn't ask for this. I didn't grow up thinking, you know, it would be really fun would be to become an alcoholic. I mean, this was so out of left field for me, as it is for all of you, as it is for everybody who this affects. We didn't for this. We didn't even think about it. We were just drinking like everybody else. We were engaging in an activity, and eventually our neural pathways got too big. And now we're sitting there going, well, what do I do? And the way he made it sound like, you know, as a scientist, to just reduce it to that took away so many years of conditioning to think that this was my fault and that I was bad and that I had a problem and, you know, I'm not strong enough, I'm not disciplined, you know, all that crap just disappeared with that one line. Never met a bad. So I would say that as far as TSM conversations was one of the most influential conversations for me. I had a lot of really great conversations with Dr. Escapa as well, but yeah, that one sticks with me. He really put it in a nutshell.
Cool. Thank you.
While we're on that topic with meeting with Dr. Sinclair, how did you go about initiating contact with him and really getting on like mind, you know, understanding everything the way that he meant things to be understood?
Well, that's an interesting question, because as I've found out over the past 13 years, things aren't exactly as they are in the book. You have to realize this is a scientist that was working with rats in Skinner boxes. He was not working. I mean, they did a lot of studies with humans, but the majority of the work was done in a laboratory. And I think that things like how long the medication will last in your body were kind of, they did a standard of the half-life, 10 to 12 hours. So he used to say to me, oh, you're fine for 10 hours. But I never drank for 10 hours unless I was on a bender. So, you know, that didn't apply to me. But I now deal with a lot of people who do drink during lunch and dinner. And I have found with some of these people that it wears off 4 to 6 hours, that they definitely see them escalating 6 hours after taking the tablet. So that means that that half-life isn't working for that individual. So Sinclair and I never spoke about second dosing. We never talked about, you know, certain things like mindfulness or keeping a drink log. He wasn't about that at all. It was about take the pill, wait an hour, drink, and only drink if you're craving alcohol. Well, that also doesn't take into consideration the person who's going to a wedding and wants to feel normal. He wants to drink. They're not necessarily craving that, and they want to have a drink in a celebratory manner with everybody else. It's important to them to have some champagne. Well, you know, that's, to me, a justifiable reason for somebody who's on TSM to take a tablet and wait an hour. But for scientists, it's like, no, we want to undo your craving. So there are some differences, definitely. And the way I met Sinclair was after I felt that I didn't even know what extinction was, but when I felt like I was better, I just felt like it was behind my back. I talk about it in my TED Talks when I had this revelation that I hadn't thought about alcohol. Nothing was triggering me to think about alcohol. I was about 3 to 4 months into TSM. And I didn't realize then that was considered a form of extinction. And I contacted Ben Bella Books, who was the publisher of The Cure for Alcoholism. And I said, I need to thank this man, Dr. Roy Escapa, who wrote this book. And so I got a hold of Roy, and he said, call me. And he was in New York and I was in LA, and I called him and we had a conversation on what I could do to help the word. And he said, write a book. I did. I said, okay. So I wrote a book, and then we became friendly, and he, you know, he would answer my emails. And then when I started informally coaching, he would give me advice if I was talking to somebody who had a question or had a problem that I couldn't answer because I had a lack of experience at that point. I was just going off my gut. I was just trying to help people source naltrexone, get on it, tell them how to do it, send them a PDF of the book. You know, I was doing really, really rustic, sort of desperate times for desperate measures. Anyway, and eventually he introduced me via email to Dr. Sinclair, and we kept in touch. And that's also how I met Dr. Stephen Cox, who's the president of the National Anxiety Foundation, which was he was one of the only doctors, if not the only doctor, that was using TSM in America back in 2009 with his patients. So, and because a friend of Roy, so that's why. So the trifecta of those three men, I went and visited Dr. Cox and went more in depth into TSM with him. Stayed at his house. It was, you know, it's just a lovely, lovely family. I went to India with Roy, Dr. Scapa, you know, we traveled together. I met people through him. I just got Dr. Didi in Dharmashala, India. I started meeting all these people in that world. And I finally ended up meeting Dr. Sinclair in Finland when I was making the documentary. So yeah, it was wonderful having these mentors around me when I was in recovery, but you have to realize that these were literally my only touch points. There were no meetings, there were no drink logs, there was no C3 Foundation, no people. Nobody knew what the hell I was talking about when I went to a party. Nobody knew about taking a medication and drinking. People thought I was crazy. So it was, you Google it. I mean, when you Googled it, the only thing that came up was naltrexone and his book.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of a desert back then.
Well, this actually is a great opportunity now to bring up the Heroes Program. Could you explain what the Heroes Program is?
So the Heroes Program was developed during the pandemic when we were, you know, really, really searching for ways to do another fundraiser. It was like we just kept, and finally I just said, you know, every single person who utilized our free resources would just give the price of a 6-pack of beer on a monthly basis, and which is, you know, easily what they're not drinking anymore. If we get 300 heroes, we could actually stop doing these ridiculous fundraisers that only raise us like $1,500. I sold all of my, I mean, I gave away, not sold, but I auctioned off all of my memorabilia from my 40-year acting career. Everything I owned, I would, you know, without to do these auctions, and they were so time consuming for Jenny. And you have to realize C3 Foundation is only 2 women, Jenny Williamson and me. So we were spending all this time doing small little things that weren't garnering us any income. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice if we just had some sort of steady income every month so we could pay the rent and stuff? And so I came up with the Hero Program. And I just thought it also was spurred by a gentleman, and I say this with a little tone of little tinge of bitterness, but this gentleman reached out to me and said, you know, I have a Save the Turtles Foundation, and I have like 700 people that give $10 a month. And I was like, what? You have 700 people who give $10 a month to save turtles, and I can't get 50 people to give $10 a month to save other people suffering from AUD? Humans?
Mm-hmm.
I was shocked. I was so angry. I mean, no offense to turtles, but come on. And here's the problem. When people get better, they move on. They don't want to look back at their drinking problem. So they forget about us. They forget that C3 Foundation helped them. They forget that they've saved all this money not drinking that much booze or going to rehab, and they just disappear. And listen, I hope my clients disappear. That means they're really, really better and they've moved on in life. And that's what I want for them. But it would be wonderful if people could give $5 or $10 a month, and we could build up to like 300-400 heroes. And then we would have at least a little source of income every month where we could pay things. As it turns out, after Hurricane Ian, we got rid of our little office that was $400 a month, but there's other stuff that we have to do and programs that we do. We eventually want to start giving out free coaching sessions to people. And to do that, we need to have a little money in the kitty to be able to pay the coaches to then provide free sessions for people. So the Hero Program is just that. You sign up for a monthly donation from $5, $10, $25. We have about 75 heroes now. And I do a meetup with them once a year, twice a year. Which I'll be doing another one pretty soon. So, you know, if anyone wants to sign up, we are deeply, deeply appreciative. It would be amazing, and it helps us tremendously. We don't have, we're not a big nonprofit. I mean, our what we get every year is online, and we're a 501c3, so it's posted online. So you can see that we don't really have a lot of spare change, which is why we gave up the office and other expenses and went remote, 100% remote. But there's a lot of things we want to do. There's still a lot of things. I want to fight for naltrexone to be over the counter. I want to do those free coaching sessions. I want to build a TSM buddy site where people all around the world can hook up like a dating site, you know, and meet people, but not dating. You know what I mean? There's a lot that I want to do, and we can't do it without money. So that's our Hero Program, and yeah, we appreciate anyone signing up for whatever amount they can handle. But I always like to tell people, how about the price of a bottle of wine that you're not drinking?
Right. And if I'm not sure if it's been posted in the chat, but if it can be posted by someone, appreciate it. And one of the questions that's kind of came up, and you've given me an answer through email a little bit, but maybe you can explain a little bit more. Are there any updates to the app situation?
Yeah, Jenny told me that the app was supposed to be updated this week.
Oh.
Yeah, that she actually talked to the guy who built it, and that yeah, it's supposed to be this week.
Do you happen to know, is that just for Android? Is it both Android and iPhone?
I presumed it was for both.
Okay.
Could be wrong. Any question?
Okay. I believe our next question is with Patsy. Patsy?
Hi. Hi, Claudia.
Hi.
Hi. Really quickly, just want to address the group. So if you're looking for a way to frame joining as a hero, you can just look at it as like your AF day or your few AF days of the month. It really doesn't cost a lot. There should be much more than 25 people behind this. So would love if that wasn't the case next time Claudia joined us, that would be amazing. Claudia.
I just tried to put a QR code in there. I don't know if it worked. That worked. That's a key. If you click on that, it's a QR code. It opens up. I don't know if that helps. I think the link is easier for people, but thank you for saying that. It really does help us enormously. I find it, maybe if I look uncomfortable talking about it and I'm not a good salesperson, I find it so uncomfortable asking people to give, even though I've given 13 years of my life to this, and that is worth something. Because all I want is for people to get better. But I find it really hard to say to people, how come you don't give $25 back? I just spent my own time, helping you or whatever. I'm just not that person. So having you speak for me is is a gift. Thank you very much.
Happy to. Happy to. So question is, well, it's kind of rigid in itself, but I really like the ideas and the fluidness that you've had about your own thoughts. And so feel free to kind of go outside the framework of this question. But I would like to know your opinion on why people might get stuck in a pattern where TSM protocol just kind of becomes part of their long-term drinking pattern, part of their nightly habit, right? And they may get stuck for, a lot longer than maybe they could have, if in some other steps to propel that process forward. One thing I know for sure is when we get away from the AA structure, it's so nice to get away from that rigidity, but like at the same time, we can overcorrect and maybe kind of not have that motivation or those goals and those steps, not wrong choice of words, but just a path, toward changes. So just from your experience and your research, what are some patterns that you see that really help TSS forward and not have that become just another part of the routine?
They've got to change things up. I mean, I've talked about this a lot. Just even changing what you drink, when you drink it, where you drink it, out of what glass do you drink it, what time you take the pill, staggering the times, really striving toward making a commitment to a night a week of just saying, tonight I'm going to go to or yoga or hang out with my friends and have tea and go bowling or do something that doesn't involve alcohol, or making that commitment, those changes. If you're just popping the pill every single night at 5 o'clock, you're not changing, you're not relearning anything. Your brain is hungry for change when you're trying to unlearn a behavior. So the medication will only take you so far. So the people who succeed the best, in my opinion, are people who start planning immediately. They say, okay, I'm going to have more time on my hands because I'm procuring, hiding, lying about, and drinking and recovering from drinking. So that's a lot of time. I'm not buying it as much. I'm not hiding it as much. I'm not, planning like, I got to go here and get this, and I'll have 2 glasses of wine before I go, and then I'll order that. And, all of that time now is going to be minimized. So the people who know that ahead of time, they plan on that. They say, okay, now is the perfect time to start studying. I've always wanted to learn a language before I turn 40 or 50 or 60 or 70. I'm going to do that now. And every Wednesday night, I'm going to do a Spanish class. And then I'm going to meet an online teacher on Thursday nights. And then I'm going to do my Duolingo from 7 to 8 when I normally would want to be drinking. I mean, they make plans. They say, okay, and you know what? Now that I'm doing this, I'm also going to get my health in order. So I'm going to take a walk between 5 and 6 when I normally would be taking a pill and drinking, so that then I at 6 and I really need to drink tonight. Consciously ask myself. So if you notice, there's no mindlessness here. There's everything is mindful. Everything is planned. Everything is mindful. This person is not just driving home from work, popping the pill, coming home, pouring the wine. Driving home from work, popping the pill, coming home, pouring the wine. There's none of that. There are conscious, mindful choices being made every single day. And there is also self-awareness. They're self-aware themselves. Do I really need to drink? Am I craving? Is it bothering me? Or is this craving, which we all know will pass? Will it pass if I take my dog out for a walk? Let me go try that. So let me go take my dog out for a walk and spend 20 minutes doing that. Come back and ask myself again, am I genuinely craving alcohol, or am I just bored? Do I not want another night in front of Netflix without wine? Okay, not a reason to drink. If you've established that you don't have, and it's a Wednesday night and there's no reason to drink, there's no wedding to go to or anything, then you can find something else to do. But it's best to plan those things so that you're not sitting there twiddling your thumbs saying, yeah, I might as well pop a pill and have some drinks. So I think the people who plan, the people who are mindful, the people who are self-aware, and the people who have some sort of goal, like, you know what, I would really like to only drink 3 nights a week, max. And they put that out there. A lot of people don't like goals. People don't say to them, you know, hey, what's your goal? I mean, I will say, in your dream world, what would your drinking look like? And then they tell me, and I say, okay, well, that's something realistic that we can work towards. But a lot of people don't want to say, oh, you know, I don't want to give it up. They're not ready. I don't want to give up my wine. I love my wine every night. I don't want to give it up. So those people usually need a little bit of a workaround in different sort of goals and mindfulness. I ask them to change up their drinking habits, because you're not going to unlearn this if you do the same thing every single time you drink. So that's just your brain doesn't work like that. You know, as we're rewiring, you want to rewire good things in there. So you want to be prone to want to go out in nature or take walks every night. Good things for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. So like from a 10,000 foot view, just like overall, you're saying, like, especially in cases where somebody has the mental or emotional like capacity to like have that motivation to like create goals, if they just kind of just pursue just mindfulness from one moment to the next, that should carry them into that state of being able to have those goals. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, because even the act of putting the wine in a cabinet and hiding it, and not just having it plopped on the table in front of you and mindlessly refilling it, even the act of keeping a drink log, that act of mindfulness. Even the act of being accountable about taking your pill and not just taking it at 5 o'clock every day, really asking yourself, do I really need to take it? Do I have to drink tonight? Just those little acts of that would be enough to start the person making new habits, better habits. But certainly they've got to start somewhere. And if it's really small, then it's the act of being mindful in any way, shape, form, including the why do I like, do I need to also determining the difference between a craving and a trigger and association and all of those things. Those are just little things that you can genuinely sit down and say, am I associating wine with something, or is this person I'm talking to on the phone making me want to drink because they're triggering me, or, you know, so you have to start asking yourself, why?
100%. That is such a helpful answer. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
I also want to add on that. I think, and this is something that came from you, is that you really need to, after every drink, really examine and say to yourself, do I really have to have one more?
And why?
And why? And
Why?
then
if
maybe
yeah.
that's something that you need to write down and journal about and process and say, why is it that I really feel that I need another one?
Well, that's also important so that you're not drinking the naltrexone. You have to determine, what am I looking for from this next drink? Is it now? Some people will say, well, I was just having such a great time with my sister. I hadn't seen her in 4 years. We were sitting in a nice restaurant and I had more than I had planned to, but we had a great time. That is okay, in a way, because that person still kept track of their drinks. They knew they were ordering another one because they were enjoying themselves and they just wanted to be with their sister and be a little bit crazy that night. And they understood mind about it. It wasn't a mindless drinking session, but it was a little bit more than they wanted to drink. And that I understand, but not the person who's really, really committed to TSM and trying to reduce their drinking. But they say, well, I opened the bottle of wine and, I was just watching a movie and I just kept refilling my glass. That's not mindfulness. That's just what you always do. And you're just doing it on naltrexone,
And I think that might be something that people should write down, or anytime they're doing a check-in, think about what percentage would you say that your session was mindful? And
Yes.
and what can you do to work on improving that? Because there are, like you said, some people will just, it's 8 o'clock, it's time for Netflix and it's time for a drink. And because that's what you do every single night until midnight, you're going to continue to drink until midnight. But if you start thinking about what can I do after that first drink, I always personally say you have to have a glass of water in between each drink. And, that's going to serve two purposes. It's going to hydrate you and it's going to make you full so that hopefully you slow down and drink a lot less.
Or if you're a beer drinker, get a great non-alcoholic IPA. If you're, wine drinker, get one of those fun mocktail things and have that between the real deal.
Yeah.
Have something. Some people just are in such a habit of having like their reward end of a week, end of a hard day of work. And it's like, well, your reward can come in many forms. For me, it's chocolate now, but it could also be saving up that money that you spend on booze to get a really great massage, or it could be, to join a gym, or saving up some of that money and saying, I'm going to go to a beautiful dinner and have one glass of wine, not a bottle while I'm sitting at home that costs $30, for just, it's a waste. So there are ways to justify it and to really, once it's an act of mindfulness, you're examining your relationship to alcohol, your alcohol use, your alcohol misuse, and there are justifications. Oh, look at Bruce Rose is here.
So it's nice
so,
when Bruce joins us.
Oh, it's so great to see Bruce. I haven't talked to him in ages. Such a great coach and all around wonderful person who's made so much difference in the UK. Anyway, yes. So yeah, all great ideas.
There are more questions, but I know you said that you're gonna be maxed out in an hour tonight, so I want to respect that.
Not, I can answer a couple more questions, and I want to say to the person asking, just listening in, there's a lot of videos on the C3 Foundation YouTube channel. We have a tremendous amount of videos on mindfulness. We also have the conferences there. We have a ton of interviews with people about TSM, and you'll find chats about mindfulness on there as well. And then in here, we talked a lot about mindfulness, so that should help you.
Let's see, if you said you could answer another question.
I'll answer another question, you bet.
Okay, I see Karen had one. Let me unmute her. Oh, there's two Karens. I'm gonna unmute both.
Okay.
See what happens. Maybe. It looks like the question was, where do you draw the line between habit change and the alcohol deprivation effect? And I think I'm froze.
It's usually when it's usually because you're in enforced sobriety and you start to crave and that would be a time to take your medication and drink mindfully. But if you're, so I don't understand the question, draw the line between habit change and alcohol deprivation effect. Alcohol deprivation effect is a perfect opportunity to take a tablet and wait an hour and drink mindfully, because you want to, as Dr. Sinclair said, you want to undo the particular craving pattern in your brain. So that's an optimal time. If you're saying, oh my God, I literally cannot get rid of the mental and physical cravings from alcohol, that's the perfect time to start the Sinclair method.
I think, sorry to clarify, where I struggle is like, okay, I can sort of make the rules where, okay, I'm gonna replace every other drink with a non-alcoholic drink, but maybe I'm thinking of ADE as something that it's not. I guess I imagine it as like the sort of challenge that I face where I'm like white knuckling, so that's how I think of it, where it's like, okay, well, if I have to replace every other drink with a non-alcoholic drink, then I like, oh, this is challenging. And that leads me to want more. But I also want to put in place measures to reduce my consumption, along with the pill and other work, therapy and those sorts of things. But yeah, the whole like habit change piece is where I struggle a lot.
How long have you been on TSM, may I ask?
Yeah, it's been about 2.5 months.
2.5 months, and you're taking the tablet every time correctly?
Yeah.
And you're saying that even though you're taking the 50 milligrams and waiting an hour, that your desire to drink is out of control, that you don't even want the non-alcoholic beverage, you just want alcohol?
I mean, I wouldn't say that. It's like, it's not out of control. It's more just like, where do I draw the line? Like I haven't seen a huge change. And I know some people like right away take the pill. And then for other people, it takes like, well, and there's the honeymoon period. I feel like it's so complex, but it's more just, how do I maximize the experience of TSM? So I don't want to push it like in the wrong direction by creating so many rules alongside the pill. That I'm like,
Right. So I would say to you, the most important thing in the first year is compliance, and compliance is everything. You can never not drink without taking the tablet. But if you're only in 2.5 months and you're complying and keeping a drink log, that's enough on your plate right now. Let's see how much you reduce. And if you're not keeping a drink log, you have to keep a drink log, because otherwise you really don't honestly know how much you're reducing. So you have to keep an accurate drink log so that you can say at the end of 3 or 4 months, when you're saying to yourself, I haven't reduced as much as I want to reduce, I look at your drink log and say, wait, reduce 28%. Huge. Okay,
yeah.
that's so this is the reason why we keep a drink log. It's because we are hard on ourselves naturally. So you're not going to see this massive difference, and you're going to go on Facebook and somebody says, oh, I took it 3 times and now I don't drink, and you're going to say, why not me? And everybody's comparing each other to, then you'll watch my TED talk. I'm like, I reached extinction at 4 months. Everybody is different. It's not linear. Okay, it takes the average person 9 to 12 months to reach any form of extinction. So give yourself a break, first of all. Second of all, if you're keeping a drink log, you're just fine. The mindfulness and the breaking of habits and the staggering the drink times and all that are for people who kind of aren't seeing the results they want to see at 6 months or 8 months.
Okay.
Now, I mean, I wouldn't even tell somebody at 2.5 months, you need to have an AF day. I don't even say that. I just say, please take the medication. Please keep a drink log. Please wait at least an hour before you start drinking. And please start just trying to be mindful about asking yourself, do I really want or need to drink, and why? Maybe keep a journal, write some notes, but I'm not going to throw in a whole bunch of stuff at you at 2.5 months. You're in the little baby section right now. You're fetus mode. So don't be hard on yourself. Don't try to compete with anybody. Don't read everybody else's posts on Facebook. Please don't do that. Nobody's journey is the same. And if you are a responder in any way, shape, or form, you will see some form of decrease in desire, or suddenly one might see that you left a half a drink in your glass and you woke up in the morning and it's there. That's huge. Those
Yeah.
kinds of things are huge. Or maybe even coming home on a Wednesday night and going, you know what? You forgot to drink, or you poured a drink and you forgot about it. I mean, those little things you need to write down and go, wow, that's a huge achievement. And
Yeah.
those things will start bubbling to the surface. Just let them come, but please take note of them. That's your job. I just want you to be conscious and self-aware and mindful. In other words, I just want you to notice things and ask yourself things. You don't need to start making these grand schemes and plans and the IPA that has 4% and the one that has no alcohol, this, that, and only on a Wednesday I can drink between 9 and 10. And no, all you have to do, I want you to be aware of
Okay, that makes sense.
and I want you to write them down, and I want you to be mindful enough to leave the booze in the kitchen while you drink in a different room, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
okay. And then after 5 months, if you feel stagnant or you haven't, moved along the way you want or the way you did in the beginning or whatever your dream is, then you can start thinking about incorporating some more changes. But let it sink in for now.
Yeah.
Don't
Thank
beat
you,
yourself.
Claudia. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Don't beat
But
yourself
this
up,
is
none of
great.
you.
All right.
I want to tell all of you this, and I say it to every meeting. You're already motivated. You're here. You're doing something about your drinking. You're taking a medication. You should be proud of yourself. I know that we feel all these negative feelings about our past drinking behavior, and we have so much shame based around that. You got to get rid of that. The first step is loving yourself and forgiving yourself and saying, you know what? I'm here. I'm showing up. I'm taking the medication. I'm trying my best. And that's all that matters. And let go of all comparisons to other people's journeys. This is your recovery journey, yours only. You might have a relapse someday. You might not. You might go smooth sailing. You might not. You might have a linear chart. You might have a very scattered chart. Your dad might still make you want to drink. Your brother might still piss you off. 6 months from now, who knows? You might go out for Halloween and get absolutely blasted, but you're on TSM. You're doing the best you can. You're doing great.
Well, I just want to again thank you for joining us. I see that Josh does not like the fake news desk. But other than that, I really appreciate you coming on, answering questions for us. We definitely appreciate it.
It's absolutely my pleasure. Yeah, we used to do the talk like this where you saw the back of my living room. Now that you've got the little news desk, it is kind of
It might change, who knows?
Who knows? But
A lot of people usually do like your backgrounds and your dress and stuff like that, so we'll see.
well, it's great talking to all of you, and I wish you all the luck on your journey. And you can use a lot of the free resources on c3foundation.org. You can also visit that YouTube page and stay in touch with each other and be good to yourselves and to each other. I think these meetings are great. I always enjoy popping in.
Thank you. And for anyone else that might not be aware, we do have meetups every single day of the week, on both here Zoom and on Discord. So please feel free to jump in, join us whenever you're doing great and whenever you might need some help.
And don't forget the links in the chat. If
Yes,
any of you
become a hero.
Yeah, we would really appreciate it at C3. Thank you.
Okay, take care, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Claudia.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Claudia.